Literally more than a year of intense negotiations, Senate Democrats have finally struck on a major healthcare and energy bill, which is called the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. This is a large investment in making healthcare and prescription drugs more affordable, fighting climate change, and taxing the wealthy corporations. Democrats are presenting this as a solution to inflation, which is currently at 9.1%. But the main question we are trying to answer here is, will it actually help bring inflation down? Before we get into will it actually reduce inflation, let's talk about what actually is the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act is aimed to make historical investments in the nation's social safety net. Now let's talk about the major components of this act. Creation of a 15% corporate minimum tax rate. Corporations with at least $1 billion in income will have a new tax rate of 15%. Taxes on individuals and households won't be increased. The second main component is prescription drug price reform. This will allow Medicare to negotiate a price of certain prescription drugs, potentially bringing down the price beneficiaries would pay for their medications. It would also require drug companies to offer customers a rebate for certain medications whose prices increase faster than the rate of inflation. Thirdly, let's talk about the IRS tax reinforcement. The IRS has been sounding alarm for years on being underfunded and underperforming. The proposed legislation would invest $80 billion in the nation's tax agency over the next 10 years. Now let's talk about the loophole. There is a well-known loophole in the tax code that enables investment and private equity fund managers to pay a lower rate on their taxes. The proposed legislation would close this loophole starting the 2023 tax year. The next main component is the Affordable Care Act subsidy extension. Currently, medical insurance premiums under the ACA are subsidized by the federal government to lower premiums. These subsidies, which are scheduled to expire at the end of this year, would extend through 2025. Approximately 3 million Americans could lose their healthcare insurance if these subsidies aren't extended. Lastly, the main component of this act is the energy security and climate change investment. The bill includes enormous investments in climate protection, including tax rebates and credits for households to offset energy costs, investments in clean energy production, and tax credits aimed at reducing carbon emissions. Now, let's come to the main point of this video is, will this act actually reduce inflation? During the remarks after the announcement of this deal, President Joe Biden asserted that the legislation would bring inflationary relief to Americans. But one early study shows that in reality, the Inflation Reduction Act likely won't reduce inflation at all. According to the Penn-Wharton budget model, there's low confidence that this legislation would have any impact on inflation. The model is a nonpartisan, research-based organization at the University of Pennsylvania that creates economic analysis for public policy fiscal impact. According to the Congressional Budget Office, a federal agency that provides budget and economic information to Congress, the bill would barely make a dent on inflation in the near term and could even nudge it upwards. If the bill is passed in 2022, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that it would have a negligible effect on inflation, and in 2023, it could change inflation somewhere between 0.1% lower or 0.1% higher than it is currently. The CBO also estimates that the bill would decrease the deficit more than $100 billion over the next decade. The federal government ran a deficit of $2.8 trillion in 2021. The bill's estimate deficit reduction would wipe out around 4% of that. Now, let's talk about maybe one amazing positive that we might get out of this bill. So, even though the bill may be short of bringing immediate relief to consumers, it is monumental in other ways. According to the Wilderness Society, a non-profit land conservation organization, the Inflation Reduction Act is described as a breakthrough in climate policy. So this is the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. As somebody that's a Tesla investor, obviously now their tax rebate will be more. GM, Toyota, and Tesla are seen as some of the companies that will benefit highly if this act gets passed. And I do believe this is a monumental policy in terms of climate change, and climate change is a very important problem that all of us as humanity face. And as America is a superpower, honestly, it's our responsibility to kind of take this forward. So I'm really happy about that. But in terms of reducing inflation, I don't know, like the model suggests, doesn't seem very highly. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye!